Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. I am Coach Castle, and in today's video we'll be discussing some more biomechanical principles in relation to exercise selection, namely active and passive insufficiency in relation to your workouts. A biarticulate muscle is a muscle that crosses two joints, meaning that it contracts at a relatively large range of motion by moving two joints. When the muscle is slightly elongated, it has a high tension capacity. But when the muscle is shortened at the end of its range of motion, it enters a state called active insufficiency. The active insufficiency manifests in the biarticular muscle's inability to shorten sufficiently and produce enough tension to complete its full range of motion. The active tension of a muscle depends on its length. At 80 to 120% of the muscle's resting length, the muscle has the potential to produce maximum force. Substantial muscle shortening reduces its force output. So what is the psychological reason for this? It's because the active length-tension relationship reflects the degree of overlap between the actin and myosin filaments in the sacrodome. Optimal muscle length condition means that the active and myosin fibers are in complete overlap. Shortening a muscle too much and then stimulating it places the actin and myosin in a state of maximum overlap, reducing force production. When the muscle is elongated, we feel strong. When it's shortened, it reaches a length that no longer allows it to produce adequate tension, making us feel weak. For example, when bending the thorax and straight knees, the hamstrings are significantly elongated. Extending the hip will shorten them to optimum length of 80 to 120%. Bending the knee will shorten it even further, and in this position, the tension in the muscle is low. As a result, it's challenging to continue the movement. You can see this position on the length tension graph below. So, there are two additional types of interference that sometimes occur when a muscle tries to contract from a disadvantaged position. These are passive insufficiency and active insufficiency. Passive insufficiency related to the contraction of a muscle that is compromised by the excessive stretching of the antagonist muscle. Typically, this type of interference occurs in the arms and legs, or specifically the biceps and triceps, or the quadriceps and hamstrings. If you attempt to contract your biceps during an exercise that causes excess stretching of the triceps, the potential strength of the biceps will be compromised as the body tries to prevent the overstretching of the antagonist muscle. Two examples of this situation occurring are the bicep preacher curl and a lying flat hamstring curl. Now, active insufficiency relates to the contraction of the muscle that is compromised by its excessive shortening. This is caused by bringing its insertion too close to its origin. And again, this type of interference typically occurs in the muscles that cross two joints. So again, the preacher curl for the biceps as well as the flat hamstring curl are good examples. So the reason these are great examples of this type of interference are because with the preacher curl, having the shoulder flexed or your upper arm raised causes the bicep insertion to get closer to the bicep's origin and results in the bicep becoming disadvantaged by being overshortened. This insufficiency results in the bicep weakness because the muscle fibers do not have sufficient length for optimal strength potential. This same insufficiency occurs during the lying hamstring curl. The insertions of the hamstrings are brought closer to the origins, resulting in the hamstrings having insufficient length for optimal power generation. Now you can perform an experiment right now, where you are actually, that will help clarify and reinforce the points of passive insufficiency as well as active insufficiency, because I know that just hearing them lectured like this is kind of hard to grasp the idea. So I'd like you guys to stand up and stand on one leg while simultaneously supporting yourself for balance against a wall or a chair, a desk or something. And while doing this, try to curl one of your legs up like a backwards bicep curl or heel towards butt while keeping your upper legs parallel to each other. What you'll discover is that this is actually very difficult to do, even though you're not using any additional weight. And it might even feel as if your hamstring is cramping. The more you move your leg backwards towards your butt and bend your knee and raise your heel towards your butt, you'll get more cramping. However, what you're experiencing is actually active and passive insufficiency, both of which are inhibiting the ability of the hamstrings to optimally contract. Now, if you'd like to actually raise your heel all the way upwards without any difficulty at all, just bend at the hips 90 degrees, and you'll have no trouble doing it. This will clarify one of the problems. But again, to achieve optimum results for the hamstring development, you'll actually want to be performing a seated hamstring curl. And this is because it allows your legs and torso to be at that 90-degree angle I was talking about, which is by far the most effective because it allows full contraction of your hamstrings, and it's a very comfortable position to be in as well. Now, a very similar situation occurs when you try to load or contract the biceps while simultaneously stretching your triceps. So you might even have discovered what you perceived as a weakness in your biceps or cramping when doing your exercises. But this is actually just due to your exercise selection and relates entirely to the passive insufficiency and active insufficiency we were just discussing with your hamstrings. I'm sure you can imagine how it applies to your biceps. So, as you all know, I often compare the hamstrings to the bicep, referring to them as the bicep of the leg. And the biceps are excessively shortened when performing preacher curls for the biceps. Now, this is because the humerus is too far forward. Now, some movements even have you overhead, like doing a standing bicep cable curl, but with the cables positioned horizontally on either side with you, shoulder height, and the people will then stand and almost look like they're doing a bodybuilding double bicep pose when they do these, which is, of course, why they do them. It's ego stroking, even though they can't actually curl much weight with their biceps, and they find they have a tendency to get that cramping notion I mentioned earlier. Now, if your the humerus is too far forward or it's overhead, this will lead to active insufficiency of the biceps. And in addition, the triceps is excessively stretched when the elbow is fully bent and the shoulder or the upper arm is in the overhead position, leading to the passive insufficiency of the biceps. Basically, the higher you raise your elbows, the more you compromise the biceps or you shorten the bicep fibers. The more the tricep is stretched, the more the bicep is compromised. And in fact, even a moderate elevation of the arm, again, such as a preacher curl, shortens the bicep and stretches the tricep to some degree, thereby triggering both of these interferences, although, of course, to a slightly lesser degree, depending on the angle. Now, this factor makes it much more difficult to curl a weight that would be considered fairly light if curled when the arms were in the proper position alongside your torso, or again, the natural or the most biomechanically correct position. Now, interestingly enough, I might add that the exercises recommended by the top coaches and trainers in the world to grow your so-called peak of your bicep will always reference these sort of exercises which have these interferences and cause cramping and overstretching and overshortening. So just another demonstration of the ignorance of modern day trainers who encourage the use of compromised principles to reinforce their made-up beliefs and ridiculous bro science. So as you all know, guys, just don't do exercises like this. We've been over this before, but you always want to have your body in the most natural position possible. You don't want to be shortening any of your muscles or overstretching any of your muscles. And this, again, is why training with the biomechanical principles is the best way to train, producing the best results. I say it all the time, but exercise selection is a hierarchy. Some exercises are better than others, and some are, in fact, perfect. So if it's perfect, it is most efficient, it is the best you could be doing, so why in God's name would you do anything else? I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Everybody stay on your grind, stay hard, keep working as hard as you can, because nobody else is going to do the work for you. Make sure you treat yourself like someone that you love and care about. Everything suddenly becomes really easy. And if the video was helpful to you, please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It does help the channel grow and allows me to make more of these videos for you guys. Have a great day, everyone.